We have this adorable student named Braden. When he came to us, he was dyslexic, and he had tremendous difficulty discriminating his B's and D's, and so he could never write his name properly. So one day, he just says to his teacher, "Just call me Braben." I just laughed so hard when I heard that. It was such a clever solution. But, you know, we don't really want our students to have to change their names, so today we are going to talk about real solutions to learning and attention challenges and how to stop the homework battle and get your confident child back. Day after day, I talk to parents who say things like, at homework time, she cries and then I cry. My son came home from school today and said, I'm the dumbest kid in the class. Parents, it does not have to be this way. There is hope. At Stoll Learning Center, we help children and adults dramatically improve or completely correct their learning and attention challenges, including learning disabilities, dyslexia, and auditory processing disorder. What this means is that your child is going to be able to do his homework on his own, and all that effort that he puts in day after day is actually going to pay off. What this really means is that the tension in your household disappears, that the frustration your child is feeling and the helplessness that you live with goes away. I'm Jill Stoll, founder and director of Stoll Learning Centers. For the last 35 years, I've been working with children and adults with learning disabilities and dyslexia. When I was a young special education teacher, I just fell in love with this amazing, talented population of students. The thing that really broke my heart, though, was that I wasn't really changing anything for them. And so these bright kids were going to have to spend their lives finding ways to get around their learning and attention challenges. And that just didn't seem like it could be right. So I left the public schools and I began studying with the experts all over the world who were doing brain research and research in all different aspects of learning. What I learned has allowed us to change the lives of thousands and thousands of students and their families, and showed us that learning and attention challenges do not have to be permanent. Most people think, well, wait a minute, if they're smart, but they're struggling, well, they must be lazy or unmotivated. But think about this. What if, like many of our dyslexic students, every time you looked at the page, it looked like this? How motivated would you be to read or do your homework? What if, when you were trying to listen to a conversation or listen in class, it sounded like a bad cell phone connection? How motivated are you going to be to listen? How easy is it going to be for you to pay attention? The skills that are needed for learning can be placed on a continuum that kind of builds like this. When kids are at school, they're working up here at the top of the continuum with reading, writing, spelling, math, and all those subject areas. But there are all these underlying skills that are needed to support easy, efficient learning up here at the top. If any of the underlying skills are weak or inefficient, it can cause you to have to work harder or longer than expected. It can get in the way of your paying attention, even though you're smart and you're motivated. So let me give you a little idea of what these are. Core learning skills, which are at the bottom of the continuum, are the reflex connections, the visual and motor skills that support body control and attention. Erica came to us when she was 7. She had a lot of issues at this core learning level, and so I just remember her. She just had so much angst and anxiety, and she was so frustrated and angry, and she had meltdowns all the time, and she absolutely would not look at anything that had to do with school. We started working with her on these core learning skills, and I just remember as we went along, Erica just blossomed. She became a little girl that, she was skipping around. She loved everybody. She eventually, in 3rd grade, became the top of her class. She loved school. So things really can change when we get at the skills that are at the root of the problem. Now, a little bit higher on the continuum, processing skills, which are also a little higher in the brain, things like memory, attention, auditory processing, visual processing, which are not your hearing or your seeing, but how the brain thinks about that information, and processing speed and language processing. Well, Michael came to us when he was 13, and he actually had issues at that processing level. He was a really, really nice boy, but he didn't have any friends. He was literally failing everything. And he had migraines and stomach aches 2 or 3 times a week because he was so anxious all the time. So when we tested Michael, we saw that he had an auditory processing problem. So I really do think for him it was kind of like having a bad cell phone connection all the time. And it really impacted his comprehension. So we began working with him to develop his auditory processing and the comprehension. And within 2 to 3 weeks, the migraines and stomach aches started to go away. By the semester, all of his grades had gone up and he'd made friends, which was a really big deal. So I happened to run into Michael in a restaurant when he was a senior in high school, and he very proudly told me he was a straight-A student and the president of his high school. A year later, he called me to say, as a freshman in college, that he was one of 60 students in the country that got early acceptance to Brown Medical School. Most people think that if you have a learning or attention challenge, you're just stuck with it, and you're going to have to find ways to live with it, to get around it, make accommodations. But that is really not true. Think about this for a second. What if you were a really talented soccer player, but you had a stone in your shoe? So your coach takes you aside and he gives you special lessons on how to run with a stone in your shoe, and then you go back into the game. Well, even though you have lots of potential, it's still going to be much harder for you to play the game than your teammates. Wouldn't it make more sense just to take the stone out of the shoe? The brain plasticity research in the last 30 years has shown us that with intensive and targeted brain training, the brain can actually literally rewire itself. If we want to correct a learning or attention challenge, we have to identify and address the underlying skills that are at the root of the problem. And we can do that through intensive and targeted brain training. This is not something that the schools and traditional tutoring do because they work up here at the top of the continuum. But at Stowell Learning Center, we identify those underlying skills and remediate the academics so that with a solid foundation, the academics can actually stick. Specialized therapies are great, speech therapy, occupational therapy, vision therapy, but they typically work with one aspect of the continuum, and so you're probably getting only a part of what you actually need. What we offer to you at Stowell Learning Center is more than hope. We have taken the research of the brilliant experts in the field and put it into a system that is consistent and repeatable over and over again so that students can become competent, comfortable, confident, independent learners. This is Hoku and Taya. Hoku said, when people ask what's made the biggest difference in your kid's life, I always say, it's Stowell Learning Center. If there's one thing I will tell any parent of a child who is struggling, I would say definitely come to Stowell. I've never seen such permanent and quick results. Parents, this does not have to be your story. There are real and permanent solutions to learning and attention challenges. Your child can have a great story too. To get your life back and help your child become the comfortable, independent learner that he has the potential to be, go to parentsatwitsend.com, and there you will find out how to contact us and get a free copy of my groundbreaking book, At Wits End, A Parent's Guide to Ending the Struggle, Tears, and Turmoil of Learning Disabilities.